Meet the Axolotl, the salamander that never grows up. I'm Ethan, and you're watching Radiant Reptilia. Axolotls have become increasingly popular in the pet trade in recent years, mostly due to their physical appearance. They're just super crazy cool animals to look at. Their scientific name is Ambystoma mexicanum, putting them in the same genus as tiger salamanders and marbled salamanders, both which are fairly recognizable and popular animals. They're native to streams and lakes in Mexico and other parts of Central America. Axolotls can get 6 to 12 inches, but probably the most distinguishing feature about them is that even at those sizes, they still retain their gills, and they essentially look like a larval salamander. And that's really because they are. Most salamanders, including all of the members of the genus Ambystoma, go through metamorphosis. They come out of the egg as larval salamanders, essentially the equivalent of tadpoles, and they spend a little bit of time running around with gills and tails and fins, and then they metamorph or transition into the adult form, which the adult form can then come out on land. It can usually breathe air and is much more terrestrial. Metamorphosis is essential for all other species of salamander if they want to produce. Axolotls, though, they're the exception. Their larval form is completely stable, it's capable of reproducing, and in the wild they rarely ever transition into their adult form at all. We call this neoteny, and axolotls we call neotenic animals. Again, this just means that they have the ability to reproduce in their juvenile state, and in the axolotl's case, they never actually need to grow out into the adult stage. Now getting into some of the controversy and drama surrounding keeping axolotls in captivity, metamorphosis does sometimes happen, especially in captive settings. We don't really know what can trigger this transformation seen in some axolotls. Some hypotheses include poor water quality or overcrowded tanks, but in other times, axolotls in presumably perfect conditions have proceeded to metamorph anyways. In their larval state, axolotls can live up to 15 years, but usually after they transition or undergo metamorphosis, that lifespan is greatly reduced, so it's definitely not something you want to be aiming for or ever want to see in your axolotl. Even if it doesn't trigger metamorphosis, poor water qualities or poor water conditions can have detrimental effects on your axolotl's health. They are extremely sensitive animals and really not beginner amphibians if you're just getting into the hobby. Things that they can be very sensitive about include water temperature, water quality or condition, and even water currents. So they are very, very high maintenance animals to take care of. So I'd imagine I don't actually need to say this, but it's the internet, so I definitely need to say this. This is not the axolotl's actual enclosure. Its actual enclosure is off screen, and it is rigged up with all sorts of apparatuses, such as water chillers and oxygenators, just to make sure that those water standards stay at the level that they need to be at. If we go back and take a look at axolotls in the wild again, unfortunately their numbers are extremely low. They are marked by the IUCN as critically endangered species, and unfortunately their future is very uncertain. Their detrimental downfall really came from the introduction of invasive species of fish into their native lakes and streams. Historically, the axolotl is the apex predator within its environment, eating mollusks and crayfish, and really any sort of small invertebrate that it could fit in its mouth. Unfortunately, after invasive species of fish became introduced into lakes and streams, where it was used to being the top predator, the axolotl's numbers really started to take a bad hit because their food sources were disappearing and the fish were eating the axolotls themselves. On the brighter side, if we can call it that, we don't really expect axolotls to go completely extinct because they are extremely well represented in both the pet trade and in scientific research communities. At the end of the day, the axolotl really is a gorgeous animal, and while it might not be the best choice if you are a first-time amphibian keeper, under the care of someone with enough experience, these animals do make amazing pets. I don't know why I put my hand up. I'm Ethan, we've been talking about the axolotl, and you've been watching Radiant Reptilia.